I've been a federal aviation security consultant for 15 years, which means I've seen every type of traveler imaginable pass through airport checkpoints. I've advised on protocol improvements at major hubs across the country, trained TSA supervisors, and even testified before congressional committees about security efficiency. But nothing in my career prepared me for the day I met Karen Whitmore at Denver International Airport's security checkpoint, not as a consultant, but as a fellow passenger trying to catch a flight. It was a Tuesday morning in late September, and I was heading to Washington, D.C. for a meeting with Homeland Security officials. I'd arrived at the airport with plenty of time, went through my usual pre-flight routine, and joined the security line like every other traveler. The checkpoint was moderately busy, maybe a 20-minute wait, nothing unusual for mid-morning at a major airport. I was about halfway through the line, reviewing some briefing documents on my phone, when I heard a sharp voice behind me cutting through the ambient airport noise. "Excuse me. Excuse me. I need to get through right now." If you've enjoyed this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World for more tales of entitled people getting exactly what they deserve. Trust me, you won't want to miss where this is going. I glanced back to see a woman in her mid-50s, with an aggressively styled blonde bob, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, and a rolling carry-on bag that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. She was attempting to push past the family standing behind me, her face already flushed with indignation. The father of the family, a patient-looking man with 2 young kids, politely shook his head. "Ma'am, we're all waiting in line. It moves pretty quickly." Karen's expression transformed into something between outrage and disbelief. "I don't think you understand. I have TSA PreCheck. I shouldn't even be in this line. I need to get to the PreCheck lane immediately." The father gestured toward the front of the terminal. "The PreCheck line is back that way, before you enter this queue. You'll have to go back and start over in that line." That's when Karen's voice escalated to a volume that made several people turn around. "I am not going back. I've already waited 10 minutes in this line, and I'm not starting over. I'm a platinum status traveler, and I have a very important flight to catch." A TSA officer who'd been monitoring the line walked over, her expression professionally neutral. "Ma'am, if you have PreCheck, you need to use that designated lane. You can't cut through this line to access it." Karen's face was now an impressive shade of red. "This is absolutely ridiculous. Do you know how much I travel? Do you have any idea how much money I spend with the airlines? I am a platinum member." The officer remained calm, something I recognized from my own training protocols. "Ma'am, everyone in this line has places to be. Security protocol requires that you use the appropriate lane for your screening type. Please proceed to the PreCheck entrance or continue waiting in this standard line." Karen made a show of checking her designer watch, which I recognized as a Cartier that probably cost around $15,000. "My flight boards in 45 minutes. I don't have time for this incompetence." I couldn't help but interject, keeping my voice level and friendly. "The PreCheck line is actually moving very quickly right now. You'd probably get through faster if you just went back and used the correct entrance." Karen's eyes locked onto me with laser focus, and I immediately recognized the look. I'd seen it in dozens of surveillance training videos. This was someone who saw any suggestion as a personal attack. "Oh, really? And who are you exactly? The Airport Welcome Committee? Mind your own business." I raised my hands in a peaceful gesture and turned back around, making a mental note of her behavior. In my line of work, you develop an instinct for people who might become security concerns, and Karen was checking several boxes: aggressive behavior, sense of entitlement, refusal to follow basic protocols. But Karen wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Over the next 10 minutes, as the line slowly progressed forward, Karen continued her campaign of harassment. She complained loudly about the incompetence of airport staff. She made several more attempts to push past people, each time being firmly but politely redirected by TSA officers. She pulled out her phone and started filming the officers, announcing that she was documenting this abuse and threatening to call her lawyer. The TSA supervisor, a woman named Agent Morrison according to her badge, approached Karen with backup. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to put your phone away and either continue in this line properly or exit and use the PreCheck entrance. Your behavior is disrupting the security screening process." Karen's response was to raise her voice even louder. "I want your supervisor. I want your name and badge number. This is harassment. I know my rights." Agent Morrison maintained her composure admirably. "Ma'am, I am the supervisor for this checkpoint. And if you continue to disrupt the security line, we'll have to remove you from the queue entirely." That's when Karen made her critical mistake. "You can't remove me from anywhere. I'm a platinum traveler. I'll have your job for this." And then, in a move that still baffles me to this day, Karen simply ducked under the retractable belt barrier and started power walking toward the metal detectors, pulling her rolling bag behind her. I'll just scream myself since none of you seem capable of doing your jobs properly. What happened next was a perfect demonstration of why we have security protocols. 3 TSA officers immediately converged on Karen, blocking her path before she could reach the screening area. Agent Morrison's voice boomed across the checkpoint with authority I had only heard in critical security drills. "Ma'am, stop right there. You have just breached a secure area." Karen actually tried to dodge around them, still pulling her bag, still talking. "Get out of my way. I have a flight to catch. This is absurd." 2 airport police officers appeared seemingly out of nowhere. They'd actually been monitoring the situation from the moment Karen first caused a disruption. One of them stepped directly in front of Karen, hand held up in a stop gesture. "Ma'am, you need to stop moving right now. You've just committed a federal offense by breaching airport security." For the first time, Karen's confidence seemed to waver. "What? I didn't breach anything. I'm just trying to get to my flight." The officer's expression remained professionally stern. "Ma'am, you bypassed the security queue and entered a restricted area without authorization. That's a violation of federal aviation regulations. I need you to step over here with me." Karen's eyes went wide. "This is insane. I'm not going anywhere. I have a flight." The second officer stepped closer, hand now resting on his radio. "Ma'am, you have 2 choices. You can come with us voluntarily to answer some questions, or we can arrest you right here. Your choice." The word, arrest, finally seemed to penetrate Karen's bubble of entitlement. "Arrest? You can't arrest me for trying to go through security." Agent Morrison stepped forward, her voice now carrying a tone of finality. "Ma'am, you were repeatedly warned about proper procedures. You ignored multiple lawful orders from TSA officers. You disrupted the security screening process. And then you physically breached the security perimeter. All of these actions are violations of Title 49 of the U.S. Code. These officers are well within their authority to detain you." I watched as the color drained from Karen's face, then immediately flooded back as anger replaced shock. "This is ridiculous. I want to speak to whoever is in charge of this airport. I want to speak to your supervisor. I'm calling my husband. He's an attorney." The first officer's response was textbook. "Ma'am, you're welcome to contact anyone you'd like, but you'll be doing it from the airport police station. Place your hands behind your back, please." What followed was a spectacular meltdown that would have been almost entertaining if it hadn't been so disruptive to hundreds of other travelers. Karen refused to put her hands behind her back. She screamed that she was being assaulted. She demanded to see supervisors, lawyers, and at one point, inexplicably, the governor of Colorado. She threatened lawsuits against the airport, the airline, TSA, and personally against every officer present. She proclaimed that she knew the mayor, that her husband played golf with senators, and that everyone involved would regret this. Through it all, the officers remained professionally calm, eventually managing to guide Karen's hands behind her back and secure them with flex cuffs. Her shrieks of outrage echoed through the terminal as they led her away from the checkpoint, her expensive rolling bag trailing behind her like a forgotten afterthought. The entire security line had stopped moving during the spectacle. As the officers escorted Karen out of sight, Agent Morrison turned to address the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for that disruption. We'll have the line moving again momentarily. Thank you for your patience." A spontaneous round of applause broke out from the waiting passengers. I joined in, shaking my head in disbelief. The line resumed moving, and I made it through security without incident about 15 minutes later. As I collected my belongings from the conveyor belt, Agent Morrison approached me. "I saw you trying to help earlier. Thank you for attempting to de-escalate." I smiled and reached into my bag, pulling out my Federal Aviation Security Consultant identification. Just instinct. I consult on security protocols for TSA. That was quite a textbook escalation scenario. Her eyes widened in recognition. "You're Jordan Hayes. I sat in on one of your training seminars in Atlanta last year." We chatted briefly about the incident, and she mentioned that Karen would likely be facing multiple federal charges, each carrying significant fines and potential jail time. Breaching airport security, even in the way Karen had done, was taken extremely seriously in the post-9/11 aviation environment. I made my flight with time to spare, and thought that would be the end of my encounter with Karen Whitmore. I was wrong. 3 weeks later, I was back in Denver, preparing for a follow-up meeting at DIA to review some checkpoint efficiency improvements. I'd been contracted to analyze traffic flow and suggest protocol modifications for the terminal security redesign. As part of my work, I was reviewing incident reports from the past month to identify common bottlenecks and security concerns. That's when I saw Karen's name again. Turns out, Karen Whitmore wasn't just any entitled traveler. She was the wife of Robert Whitmore, a mid-level attorney at a Denver corporate law firm. More interestingly, she'd been leveraging her husband's legal credentials to wage a campaign of harassment against the airport, TSA, and anyone else she felt had wronged her during the security incident. According to the reports, Karen had filed formal complaints with the Department of Homeland Security, the FAA, the Denver City Council, and even attempted to sue individual TSA officers for false arrest and emotional distress. Her husband's law firm had apparently distanced themselves from her crusade, but that hadn't stopped Karen from sending certified letters to seemingly everyone involved in her arrest. But here's where it got interesting for me personally. One of those certified letters had been addressed to the unidentified male traveler who instigated the confrontation at the security checkpoint. Through some impressive detective work, or possibly just reviewing security footage and passenger manifests, Karen had identified me as the person who'd suggested she use the PreCheck line. The letter, forwarded to me through official channels, was a masterpiece of misplaced blame. Karen claimed that I had deliberately interfered with her travel plans, that my unsolicited advice had provoked her justified frustration, and that I bore partial responsibility for her unlawful detention. She threatened legal action if I didn't provide a written statement support. The Las Vegas conference arrived, and I checked into the Venetian with my presentation loaded and ready. The summit attracted nearly 2,000 aviation security professionals from across the country. The breach triggered immediate response from TSA officers and airport police, as per protocol. The passenger was detained, removed from the checkpoint, and subsequently arrested for violation of Title 49 U.S. Code, interference with security screening procedures. Another slide showing the arrest codes and potential penalties. Fines up to $13,000 per violation. Potential criminal charges. Mandatory court appearances. Now, here's where this case becomes particularly instructive for our discussion today. Following her arrest, this passenger launched an extensive campaign claiming she was a victim of security overreach. She filed complaints with multiple federal agencies, attempted to sue individual officers, and began using social media to portray herself as a defender of passenger rights. I clicked to show carefully curated screenshots from Karen's blog. No identifying information visible, but the content was unmistakable. The passenger claimed she was simply asking questions and standing up for travelers. She positioned her arrest as an example of TSA tyranny and security theater run amok. Karen was now visibly shaking in her seat. Several people in nearby rows had turned to look at her, recognition dawning on their faces. However, as we can see from the documented evidence, this passenger wasn't advocating for rights. She was demanding exemption from rules that exist to protect everyone. She wasn't questioning security protocols. She was refusing to follow them. And when faced with consequences for her actions, she constructed a narrative that positioned her as a victim rather than accepting responsibility for breaching federal security protocols. I paused, making eye contact with various people throughout the audience. This case raises important questions for all of us in aviation security. How do we handle passengers who genuinely don't understand protocols versus those who simply believe rules don't apply to them? How do we maintain the authority necessary for effective security while still providing excellent customer service? And perhaps most importantly, how do we protect our frontline officers from harassment campaigns by individuals who refuse to accept consequences for their actions? The next slide showed the aftermath. Karen's formal charges, her multiple ongoing legal issues, and the federal no-fly investigation that had been triggered by her security breach. I'm pleased to report that the officers involved in this incident followed protocols perfectly. Their professionalism under pressure was exemplary. The passenger, however, is currently facing multiple federal charges, significant fines, and is under review for placement on the no-fly list. Karen stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Every head in the ballroom turned toward her. "This is me. You're talking about me. This is a violation of my privacy. This is slander." I remained calm, my voice steady. "Ma'am, this is an anonymized case study approved by the Department of Homeland Security for educational purposes. No identifying information has been shared. If you're claiming this case study describes your actions, that's your own admission." The conference security team was already moving toward Karen's row. Agent Morrison, sitting in the front, stood and turned to face her. "Ms. Whitmore, you should probably sit down." Karen's face went from red to white. "You all conspired against me. This is a setup. I'm going to sue every single person in this room." The conference moderator stepped to the podium. "Ma'am, you need to exit the ballroom now, or we'll have security escort you out." Karen grabbed her bag and stormed toward the exit, but not before turning back to shout one more time. "You haven't heard the last of this. My lawyer will destroy all of you." The doors closed behind her, and the ballroom erupted in scattered applause. The moderator turned to me with an apologetic expression, but I just smiled and shrugged. "Shall we continue? I have several more case studies to discuss, though I doubt any will be quite as dramatic as that one." The rest of my presentation went smoothly, and the Q&A session afterwards was incredibly engaged. Multiple TSA directors approached me afterwards to thank me for highlighting the challenges their officers face from entitled passengers. Agent Morrison found me after the session ended. That was spectacular. Did you know she'd be here? I smiled. I may have noticed her name on the attendee list. And I may have specifically requested that this case study be included in my presentation. It seemed educational. She's going to be impossible now, Morrison said, though she was grinning. Actually, I don't think she will be. Because here's what she doesn't know yet. I pulled out my phone and showed Morrison an email I'd received that morning. It was from the Department of Homeland Security, officially notifying me that I'd been asked to serve on the review committee for Karen Whitmore's no-fly list evaluation. Her security breach triggered an automatic review. Her subsequent behavior, her harassment campaign, and her demonstrated inability to follow basic protocols have all been documented. The committee reviews cases like hers to determine if she poses an ongoing security risk. Morrison's eyes widened. You're going to be evaluating whether she ever flies again? Along with 6 other security professionals, yes. We review the evidence, assess the risk factors, and make a recommendation. Given her documented behavior pattern, her refusal to accept responsibility, and her ongoing harassment of federal officers, well, the recommendation writes itself. That's brilliant, Morrison said. She tried to destroy your reputation and everyone else's, and instead, you're the one who gets to determine if she ever steps on a plane again. We watched through the ballroom windows as Karen Whitmore stormed through the casino floor toward the exit, still clutching her notebook, her face a mask of absolute fury and humiliation. She'd come to this conference planning to expose what she saw as security failures and present herself as a passenger rights advocate. Instead, she'd been exposed in front of 1,500 aviation security professionals as exactly what she was, an entitled passenger who believed rules didn't apply to her. And now, thanks to her own actions, her own security breach, and her own campaign of harassment, she was facing a federal review that would likely ground her permanently. I thought about all the hours she'd spent crafting her victim narrative, all the complaints she'd filed, all the threatening letters she'd sent. She'd been so focused on being right, on demanding accountability from everyone else, that she never stopped to consider she might face accountability herself. The irony was perfect. The woman who'd built her entire identity around being a platinum status traveler and travel influencer was about to lose the ability to travel at all. Agent Morrison and I headed to the bar for a celebratory drink. As we walked, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Karen Whitmore, sent from the conference center's business lounge approximately 10 minutes ago. The subject line read, "Cease and desist." I didn't even open it. Instead, I forwarded it directly to the DHS Review Committee with a note. Additional evidence of ongoing pattern of behavior. Morrison saw my expression and laughed. She still doesn't get it, does she? No, I said, pocketing my phone. She really doesn't. She thinks she's fighting for her rights. She thinks she's the victim. She thinks if she just complains loudly enough, threatens enough lawsuits, and demands enough supervisors, she'll get what she wants. But she's not getting platinum status treatment anymore, Morrison said. No, I agreed. She's getting exactly what she earned. Federal charges. Industry-wide recognition as a security risk. And very possibly, a permanent ban from flying. We reached the bar and ordered drinks. Through the glass walls, we could see the Las Vegas Strip spreading out in all directions. Millions of people moving freely, traveling, living their lives without drama or entitlement. And somewhere out there, probably in an expensive rideshare heading back to the airport, Karen Whitmore was having the worst day of her life. All because she couldn't accept the simple truth that even platinum status travelers have to follow the rules. I raised my glass. To aviation security, I said. Morrison clinked her glass against mine. And to passengers who learn their lessons. Eventually, I added with a smile. We drank, and I felt the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, the system works exactly as it should. Karen had tried to weaponize her status, her husband's legal credentials, and her victim narrative against everyone who had simply been doing their jobs. Instead, she'd weaponized herself right onto a no-fly list. My phone buzzed again, another email from Karen, this one with "Urgent, legal action pending" in the subject line. I didn't open that one either. I just forwarded it to the review committee with the same note: additional evidence of ongoing pattern of behavior. Because here's what Karen still didn't understand. Even after her very public humiliation, every email she sent, every threat she made, every complaint she filed was just more documentation of her inability to accept responsibility and follow basic social protocols. She thought she was fighting back. She thought she was standing up for herself. She thought she was proving everyone else wrong. But really, she was just building the case against herself, one entitled demand at a time. And I had a front row seat to watch it all unfold. 3 days later, I received official notification that the review committee would be convening in 2 weeks to evaluate Karen Whitmore's case. I was listed as the primary security consultant on the panel. I smiled and marked it on my calendar. Sometimes justice is swift. Sometimes it's dramatic. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's exactly what someone earned through their own actions. Karen Whitmore had spent years believing her platinum status made her special, that her frequent flyer miles bought her exemption from the rules everyone else followed. She was about to learn that all it really bought her was a permanent place on the wrong kind of list. If you enjoyed this story of entitled behavior meeting epic consequences, please like this video and subscribe to Karen Eat World for more incredible tales of people getting exactly what they deserve. Drop a comment below telling me about your own airport security nightmare stories. I read every single one.